Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by Alex Winton. And we are joined, it's about 12:30, 1:30 a.m. right now. We just got done watching the Grizzlies. They lost game 4 to the Lakers, now down 3-1. And it was a crazy game. This is, I would say, obviously you want the Grizzlies to win, but just from a playoffs perspective, this has probably been one of the more exciting games I've watched in the playoffs. Obviously didn't go the way that the Grizzlies wanted it to. And it sucks because they definitely had a chance. They definitely had a chance to win this game. They were up by 7 in the fourth quarter, and then the Lakers went on a big run to tie it back up. Some big threes from D'Angelo Russell, and then big shots from LeBron James in year 20, and at the end of regulation, and then also in overtime with that and one on Dillon Brooks as well. So 2 big plays by LeBron really is what won them that game, and then just some questionable decisions and stuff like that, which we're going to get into on the Grizzly side of it, in terms of the rotations, in terms of who played a lot of minutes and who didn't play a lot of minutes. Because there is a lot of things that you can look at the box score and see who played. And there's a couple questionable things. And I'm going to start here because this is the number one thing I'm hearing from everybody who watched this game is why wasn't Luke Kennard in the game more? He only played 14 minutes. He was 2 for 4 from 3. They've had struggles getting him open and scheming ways to get him open, and I think that's been the number one issue. But the other thing is some of these open shots he hasn't taken them. That wasn't really the case in game 4, but that was more like game 1, and then a little bit in game 3. I feel like he had some open shots. But I do agree that I think that he just provided more spacing, and I think that probably would have helped down the stretch. Because the Grizzlies didn't necessarily have a defensive issue for most of the game. They had some defensive lapses, but overall they were solid on defense going down the stretch. Of course, LeBron was LeBron in that fourth quarter and made an awesome shot that really sent us to overtime. But I mean, Jaren had great defensive plays. They forced turnovers. They did a lot of good stuff on defense. Basically, that entire fourth quarter and overtime. It was really the other side where I think they needed that boost.
Yeah. People are going to talk about the minutes. I'm looking at the minutes now. The most minutes that was off our bench was Roddy at 20. Aldama at 7, Jones at 9, Kennard at 14. I think, and then you compare it to the Lakers bench, they had 2 guys in 20 minutes. Dennis had 30 minutes. So, I mean, we can talk about the bench. I obviously would have liked Luke to play a little bit more minutes because in the games prior, I think the last 3, he's been a plus. Obviously, you don't go off of always plus minus. It's not the end all be all. But personally, I think you obviously got to look at it and just be especially in this series, because I said the keys obviously were making shots, obviously the free throws and the foul discrepancy, obviously rebounding, and then obviously your role players. That's really where I feel like the difference has been. Role players. Obviously, stars got to be stars too, which we'll get into. But I mean, I think the Lakers barely got a little bit more from their bench tonight. I mean, we got 6 from Kennard. They got, I think, 20 something before compared to our 15. So we're just not gonna. It's just hard to get any really good, especially when your margin of error is slim. That's really, it's all about margin of errors and what you have to do to compensate for things. So because we didn't get as much minutes from Luke or as many points from Luke, now your starters have to be just as great, or not just as great, but even greater to overcompensate for that, just to have a chance. And you had a chance, but we'll get into it. But you needed more from Ja and Jaren in particular. Bane showed up. Obviously, shout out to Bane. He finally had he finally showed up to the series, which was good to see. Obviously, a few timely misses, but yeah, when you talk about Kennard, they got to find him more looks. But again, like you said, he has to take more looks. The thing is, this has been a problem they talked about before. People that have had Luke Kennard in their roster, he sometimes will not take open shots at times. like if he's not wide open. So that is a thing that you can talk about. But because again, you got to think like they push him to take shots. They've been doing it ever since he got there. He even said they've been telling me to take more shots. They've been telling me to take more threes. So I think Luke would have helped if you played a little bit more minutes, but you also got to play the right rotation because Luke is obviously physically challenged, and you already have a 6'3" point guard who's an average defender. Then you got Bane, who's solid defender, 6'5", 6'6", but obviously he has physical limitations because of his wingspan. So that puts him at a disadvantage. So if you're gonna play a 3-guard lineup, because Luke's 6'5", I think he got short arms too. So then you got Dylan out there at the 4. Like you're gonna be very small. So it's gonna be hard to kind of play him with that lineup if that lineup doesn't optimize or make up for what he's weak at. So yeah, I mean I think he could have played a little bit more, but it's like if he would have played it anymore, would he take more shots? You know what I mean? Because he played. I think if we go look at his games before, if I'm not mistaken, if I go look at Luke Kennard's games real quick, I'm pretty sure he played like more minutes. Yeah. So the last 3 games he's played 25, 24, 26 minutes. And the last game he took 4 shots. The same he took this game. So my thing is, even if he gets the minutes, it's going ultimately we got to get him more shots, but he's got to take more shots. Like, so even if he would have played 10 extra minutes, we saw last game he only took 4 shots. So I don't know if it was going to make big difference. Which I mean, obviously it would have helped, but like the real big difference comes down to the starters at this point, and just making plays. So and the Lakers kind of made a little bit more plays than we did at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what you said. Like really before we even started this song, like they made timely plays. Like whenever they needed to make the big plays, they made it. Obviously, the Grizzlies did have a big play like in that fourth quarter before the LeBron shot, where Jaren got that awesome block, and then they ran out, and Ja had the behind the back pass to Desmond Bane, and that was a special play. Like that was an awesome play, and then obviously it didn't turn out the way like that was to give them the lead with I think just a couple seconds left in the game, but left a little bit of time on the clock. That was the only thing that when they did make that you look and it's like there's still like 6 seconds on the clock. That's enough time. And then I think they were worried about the 3, rightfully so, because you don't want to get sent home. But it was one of those things where it really felt like they needed to win that in regulation. Because what happens is like the crowd in regulation, you could tell that it kind of lost a little bit of the energy, right? And then LeBron hits the shot, right? The energy's back. Anthony Davis gets the block on Ja. Right now, you're going to like the commercial break. There, you can't see all this, but you know that everybody in the arena, the mascot is probably up doing stuff. They're getting everybody hyped. And when they came back in overtime, it was like a completely different atmosphere again. It was like the game had just restarted. And I think that was another thing. I think the Lakers really fed off of that energy in that overtime period. And not to say that's like the only reason why the Grizzlies lost in that overtime period, but I mean, I think the Lakers basically doubled the Grizzlies up in OT because it was 13-7. So that was a big thing because I feel like there was like a momentum shift at the end of that fourth quarter. The same way that there was a momentum shift in the first half when the Grizzlies made that big run and really made it a game again. But that is like looking at a couple positives is like, they came out and they were down by 15 in the first half, brought it all the way back, cut it to 2, had a lead and had a chance to win the game. And it was just, you see a little bit of like the inexperience and stuff like that. Having guys that haven't really been there before, I think that really does come into it versus having a guy like LeBron on the other team. And I think that you could really see kind of like the difference in how the teams played. It felt like the offense just overall down the stretch was really just it was just really inconsistent. Like they would have these stretches, especially like Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane was really the guy who he was really the only guy who, even though he didn't even shoot the ball like incredibly well, because he was still 3 for 12 from 3, but he scored in so many different ways, whether it was like getting downhill. He hit a lot of mid-range jumpers, which I think is something that we definitely need to see him continue to add to his game, is getting in the mid-range, because he did a great job of doing that to the Lakers. I don't think they were really ready for that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he scored as much as he did. But down the stretch of the game, missed 2 big threes in the corner, right? And it's one of those things where it's like you need him to make those when he's open like that. You know, he had 2 chances at it and he missed it. Not to say obviously that it's his fault. He was really the dude that was carrying the offense, but those were the shots. It felt like every time the Grizzlies really needed the shot to go in, that really would have put the Lakers at a disadvantage and really could have been like the dagger shot. Like they had a couple chances that could have been the dagger shot before the Lakers made that run and D'Lo made those threes, but they just didn't. They never made the shot that really closed it out, and it allowed the Lakers to get a little bit of momentum in the end of the fourth quarter, and they carried that into overtime.
Yeah. The thing about that is just this. Yeah, like you said, it's just the momentum stuff, man. The swings, like they're just so big. Because there was a point, like you said, before those D'Lo shots, I think there was like a non-call on Bane, and then he hit a 3. Like little stuff like that matters, and just the margin of errors is tough. Like Bane missed, like I said, a couple key shots. And again, like you were talking about with blaming, I'm not big on blame. Like I'm big on blame pies. I'm gonna always say it. It's not just one person's fault. They can have majority of the fault, but everybody has a hand in this. Like everybody, coaching staff included, everybody got a hand in this loss. Now, percentage wise, I'm not gonna break it down too much. I mean, if we're gonna talk about percentage in Bane, I would say Bane is not the main reason we lost the game. I'm just gonna say that. Bane is the 36 points. Like he had more points than Ja and Jaren combined. And we're gonna talk about anybody needing some blame is those two. And not good, granted. Like you said, their problem, not just them, but team wise, wasn't defensively. Offensively, you needed some shots. And going back to what you're talking about, timely shots, Bane missed a few, but also Ja missed a few. I mean, Ja had a couple times where he drove the ball and like basically was like, again, this is what frustrates me. Not frustrates me about Ja, but makes you realize these guys are inexperienced. Ja took a floater, and again, we've seen it. Ja can get to his floater at any time, damn near in the game. Like it don't matter when. Like off the pick and roll, he can get it to at any time, especially because they're gonna play drop usually sometimes. Why would you? He took the first one in OT, and then on top of that, you had a time where he could have had a layup, but then he tried to dunk on Bron, and then he got a charge call. People talk about, well, that was a bad charge call. Yeah, it's a bad charge call, but Josh shouldn't have put himself in that position anyway. So that could have probably been a bucket right there. Then Jaren, who has been good against big, or they're anybody besides AD, I think he missed the chippy like close to the rim, and then I think they scored a 3 or a bucket after that. Like little stuff like that matters. It's going to shift the momentum. And so, and just like to you, what you're talking about with Bane, he missed a couple, missed those corner threes that swung momentum. Like everybody had misses that swing, but those 3 in particular are the people that are going to take the most shots. They took the most shots. Bane had 29 shots, Ja had 24, and Jaren had 15. So like they took the most shots, which you live and die with it. They just didn't make them. Like it happens. Like obviously you're discouraged by it, but I mean, I'd rather them take the looks than obviously somebody else of our starters, Tillman, Brooks, Tyus. Like I'd rather them, like, because I'm gonna say this now because everybody likes to talk about. I know this is random, but people like to talk about like who's not playing well and get them on my team. Listen, look, Ja, Jaren, and Bang will be here for like the next 7-8 years, whether you like it or not. That's me being objective. So you better live with them going through this because this is going to be here. I'm not going to promise you. I'm not the GM or nothing. I don't know Zach Kleiman. But I feel like I have a good idea of who he probably thinks is going to be here. They're going to be here. So they're going to miss and make shots. Like, it's just part of the game. And they didn't make enough. Like, that's even though Bane was great, we just needed more. So it happens, man. It's part of the game, man. It's just the momentum swings. Like I said, Lakers made timely shots. Bron made timely shots. I think 80 made a timely midi. I think Reeves made a timely 3. Like, they just made big shots, man. Like, you just got to give them credit at the end of the day. So that's just what it is. It's a make or miss league, as they like to say. Make or miss league. And we missed.
Yeah, no, they missed a lot. 9 out of 42 from the 3-point line. But they really the 3-point makes wasn't really the issue to me because they made 9, the Lakers only made 10, so they were really even on makes. But my issue is I don't understand why they needed to take 42 threes. Like I know some of them been. I just don't understand why they're taking 42 threes. I just don't think that's sustainable for the guys that you have out there, especially when you're looking at who's taking the most threes. I mean, Ja took 6, Dylan Brooks took 7. They both took more threes than Luke Kennard, the highest in the NBA. And it's like stuff like that where you got to worry about like the shot selection and maybe some of the decisions that were being made down the stretch. Like you talk about even with Ja, which obviously he had a great game in the last game and really was the only reason why that wasn't a complete blowout. But then tonight he struggled a lot and he missed. I would say he missed some uncharacteristic shots. I don't know if his hand had something to do with it a little bit because I know he did re-aggravate it, but it was a lot of just like, especially in that fourth quarter, just trying to go over people a little bit too much. Like there's no reason to try to jump over 6'9" LeBron James. Like I understand that he's 38, but it's like there's no reason to try to jump over him in that situation. Maybe try to draw contact and do some other stuff, and then it also puts him at a risk of being hurt again. Because especially when you look at the way that he fell on both of those charges when he got undercut by Braun on those, which you can talk like you can argue about whether it was a bad call, whether that should even be in the game, and based on like when he jumped, all that you can get into all that. But at the end of the day, he like that puts him at a risk whenever he jumps like that. And I know that, yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like whenever it works and it becomes a highlight and all that, it looks great, and I get it. And even like the poster, you see he jumped over Malik Beasley. I get it.
Yep.
It happens. Like that's what makes him so great. But I feel like sometimes he gets a little bit ahead of himself down the stretch, and I think that did affect him a little bit. Now, like you said, there's a lot of people like people just didn't make shots tonight. That was the main issue. I think the defense was fine. They did a really good job on the offensive glass, too. I think that was a big thing. Jaren did have 14 rebounds, even though he didn't shoot the ball well. So that was something that was positive. That they've been better on the board since game one, and it's definitely been a positive for them. And I think that's really the reason. Like the thing that they missed Steven Adams so much for is the offensive rebounds and how many more possessions that they were getting. And it was like they weren't shooting the ball well, but they get more shots up, right? That happened in this game as well. They ended up taking 12 more shots than the Lakers for the game. And that's a lot of that is because of the offensive rebounds and because, they forced a couple more turnovers and stuff like that. But they still ended up only making one more shot. So at the end of the day, like the offensive rebounds are awesome, but you have to convert those into more second chance points. And then you got to hit open shots. Like I think it really just comes down to that. You're not going to win games in the NBA missing open three-pointers, especially when you look at the way that the league has shifted to more of a three-point shooting teams in general. And I think it's Chris Vernon that always says that. He always says you have two options when you start missing a bunch of shots. You either got to stop shooting or make more. And if you're not making more, take less or make more. And I agree. Like I think that they got way too three happy for stretches of the game. And I think down the stretch, and one of the reasons why they ended up taking the lead was because they did work the offense a lot more. But then down the stretch, they couldn't make shots when it mattered most. That's really what it came down to. It's very similar to how Game 4 in the Warriors series went last year, where it was close all the way up to the end, and then they just couldn't close the game.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of that. Yeah, people, I know it sounds like sometimes people want an explanation for why certain things happen. It's literally just that simple sometimes. Like we know basketball like this, like, and we can break it down. But ultimately, it's very simple. They just made more shots. Like I'm just thinking about all the shots that we missed and all the shots that the Lakers made. They just made timely shots, like more than us. Like I went through. Jaren missed a timely shot. John missed a timely shot. A couple. Like you just gotta make the shots because the Lakers just made them. Like Brian and one. I think the layup because that was a tough finish where Brian had to take it into overtime. Then I think AD made one earlier. And obviously, to your point about the rebounding, they've been better on the glass. But even then, in that, there's key plays they missed. There was a couple rebounds where I think AD got an offensive rebound or they got an extra possession and then they ended up scoring and they just played 20 seconds of good defense. Then there were a couple costly turnovers that they had, like where Ja got the rebound right at overtime to start the overtime. Or not rebound. I think it was a steal. He got a steal, tried to get it, and then lost the ball, gave it back to Dennis Schroeder, and then they scored. Like little stuff like that matters. It's the playoffs. Every possession matters. And I think the Grizzlies showed their lack of inexperience, obviously, in those type of moments because, like, how that happened, it's weird, but even then it's just careless. Like I was going back to it. Like that's just careless. Or the charge call where John got to realize, hey, maybe I should take the floater here. That's just careless. Or like when you talk about where he landed on his hand a couple times, knowing you're going to put yourself in a position where you can get hurt again, which goes back to the first time when he got hurt because he was shooting the mid-range jump shot and floater the whole game, and then he decided to want to dunk on 80. It's just careless stuff. And that's not me trying to be bashing him. Like he's going to be better. Like all these guys are going to be better. But right now they're making mistakes. Like it's part of the game. Like, you know, they're gonna grow from it, but it's tough. Like you just didn't make enough plays. It's about making plays at the end of the day. Like your best players got to make plays. Like that's just the name of the game. If you go back through every, like I'll keep saying it. We've seen it through the history of NBA. Guys are making big shots and big plays, whether it's a stop, rebound, shot. Like it doesn't matter. We just didn't make enough of them. We made some. We just didn't make enough. Like so. So now they, you know, they got to live with those type of things, get back to the drawing board, you know, clean some things up, obviously, because, I mean, now you're in a must-win situation now every game, you know, so desperation will be there. I'm not worried about that. It's just about if they can stay, you know, focused and locked in for what's to come, because obviously they got a game in Memphis, which I'm going to go on record saying now, I think personally before this game, regardless of how it went, I thought they was going to win Game 5. That's just how I got a feeling in my gut that says they're going to win Game 5 because they're desperate at home. But yeah, obviously they got to get back to game. They got to win the game. It's a must win. But like, yeah, they're trying. I think they'll get a Game 6, obviously. But like, yeah, I mean, it's just they got to lock in, man. They got to not flush it all the way. You want to take some stuff from it, but you can't dwell on this game. Like you still got. See, it's a 7-game series still. It's the first of 4, so they got to have that mindset of like it's because it's 3-1. It's not obviously your odds are against you, but it's not impossible. So they got to have your mindset matters. So they got to make sure they stay locked in on what they need to do because the series is not over until it's actually somebody wins 4 games, at least for this context. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and obviously, like the odds are now stacked against him coming into this game. I basically said like you got to win Game 4 in order to basically put you back in control of the series, right? You win Game 4, then you got 2 games at home, and you got a chance to either win the series in 6 or 7 as long as you get Game 5, right? But now being down 3-1, it puts you at such a disadvantage. Now, I do agree. I do think that they probably will win Game 5 just because, like you said, it's going to be a desperation game. We saw the way that they played last year against the Warriors in this same situation. Now, I don't know if they're going to come out and win by 50. Like, I'm not calling for anything like that. But I do think that you're going to see them come out and play really well in front of the home crowd. They've been awesome at home all season. I know that they lost Game 1 there, but they came back and then played really well in Game 2. And I think with the season on the line, that's going to be – I think they'll win Game 5. So I'll go with you on that. It's going to be – the biggest thing is going to be, you know, if they do end up winning Game 5 is can they get a win in Los Angeles? And that's been the issue. And if you look at it the whole season, we talked about it on this podcast multiple times. Road games have been an issue the whole season. So that is the one thing that I'll continue to say is like not a positive, but everything that has hurt the Grizzlies in this series is stuff that we have talked about either on this podcast before or stuff like that we have seen as issues they need to fix. So the good thing is, regardless of what happens from now on, you know the issues that you have to be addressed. You got to have more guys that can shoot the ball consistently from the outside, and you got to have more guys that can put the ball on the floor and create their own shot. That is something that they're lacking on, especially when you're talking about guys coming off the bench. Because even if you talk about adding Brandon Clark and Steven Adams, which those guys were awesome, that's a big reason why they're down 3-1 is because they haven't had those guys on the interior. That's a big reason why. And you can say what you want about if they had those guys where the series would be. I don't really want to play that game right now because you could do that in basically any series, like all time. You could go back and look, oh, well, this guy was out here and there. But, right, that's definitely had an effect. But those guys are not going to help if you're going 9 for 42 from 3. Like, that's like the 3-point shooting issue is still an issue, right? Those guys are not necessarily going to help them in the terms of making the shots that they missed tonight. So, like, there's a lot of things that you got to take into account. Like, David Roddy is playing 20 minutes before the season. nobody would have thought David Roddy would be playing any minutes in a playoff game, right? Like David Roddy, Santi Aldama, these are guys that are not supposed to be in the rotation. So you got to look at it that way too. Like those are guys that aren't supposed to be out there. And that's why, like, when we talk about like people who miss shots and people who mess up, like you gotta look at really like the starters, like you said. Because off the bench is really just Luke Kennard and then Tyus, which I do gotta say they gotta like Tyus has to give you something. Like Tyus has not been giving the Grizzlies anything off the bench. And that's an issue that's gonna have to be addressed too. Tyus cannot only be good as a starter, right? It's awesome that when he starts, he's a great starter and the Grizzlies rally around him and all of that. But he's going to have to be able to affect the game off the bench as a backup point guard. And if he can't do that, then the Grizzlies are going to have to find somebody who does. Because as great as he is as a starter, he's great when he starts. That's not his role on the team. You got to find people that can play the roles that you're putting them in. And I think that's another thing is the Grizzlies don't have enough guys that can play the roles that they need them to play. They don't have enough guys that can play the role as a 3-and-D guy, which the Lakers do. Like the Grizzlies don't have even a guy like Austin Reeves who can come in and do some stuff like that, or a guy like Rui Hachimura who's been really good this season and has come off the bench and played well. The Grizzlies just needed one guy to do that, and they were hoping it would be Luke Kennard. I think that in the first couple games, like I said, he should have taken more shots, but I think in this game he really did. I think he took the shots when they were there in this game, but he just didn't play enough. And I think that he also added so much more spacing, and I think that's really when they went on the run. Was even though Luke Kennard wasn't getting shots up, they can't bring doubles to Ja, or they can't bring doubles to Jaren as much and leave Luke Kennard open the way that they were leaving Dillon Brooks open. And then Dillon Brooks still, I know he ended up making 1 3, but he ended up being 1 for 7 from 3. Like, you're not going to win games when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, no, you're not going to win games at all. Yeah, we're talking. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we'll obviously talk about. But just to go back to your point about the Tyus thing, yeah, it's another question. Again, like you talk about, we've been saying all this stuff all year. A lot of stuff we've been saying. I mean, even if you kept up with us on the pod, but even on Twitter, I've been saying the same stuff. I've been saying the Grizzlies' road woes have been real. You got to believe what a team shows you for 82 games. You just got to believe it. That's the proof. The proof's usually in the pudding. For some stuff, obviously, it's not all the way, but some stuff, like it gives you a good idea. Like, yeah, they're probably going to struggle on the road. Now, and here's the thing. While in that, they've won good road games. My biggest thing is they haven't been consistent. And they did the same thing tonight. They started out bad, and a lot of it was just they didn't make enough shots. And everybody's like, oh, man, it's you know how the timeline is. Everybody going to overreact. You know how it is. Timeline, group chats. Man, it's over. Blah, blah, blah. Bane and Ja playing, or Ja and all them everybody playing bad. And by the end of the first half, you're only down 2 after that. And it's okay. Like, you just it's a game of runs. And then they came out in the third, played all right, got the lead, and it was kind of back and forth. Then you get to the fourth. They actually had the lead and seemed like they were in control. And then the Lakers brought it back, this and that. And then they made big plays, but then the Lakers just kept on making big play after big play. And then you got an OT, started out well or started out slow, and basically couldn't find your footing again. Like, they couldn't make that extra run they needed. So, yeah, it's just tough because, again, like, they got to make more shots. I think, obviously, with what they need, they're missing. Like you said, a lot of it is just their roster wasn't constructed or for this type of thing where you got guys that are dependent on they're out of place, per se. Let's say that. No disrespect to Tillman, because Tillman's been great in the series, but obviously, not even just Tillman, but if you not even just Adams, if you have BC, that changes how much you depend on Tillman. Not to say you wouldn't be playing Tillman big minutes, but you'd have another body that we've seen BC win a playoff series. Like, outside of Tyus and Kennard, like, you had a playoff 8 or 9 guys, so you only need like 8, like 9. And they had them, but 2 of them are out for the season. So then that pushed guys like Roddy out, who, like you said, rookie that I know, if anybody, I would love for anybody to at me after this. If you predicted David Roddy to play playoff minutes, congrats to you, because I definitely didn't. No disrespect to David Roddy, but I did not expect this. He played 20 minutes in the playoff game. Like, So, and I think a lot of that, again, obviously it's on the players, like, again, blame pie. We get into a bigger picture. That's a lot on the roster construction. That's a front office thing, which I think obviously they'll go in and address. Obviously they picked up Luke, so I'm not concerned about that. They'll do their job. Like, I'm not that worried. But that just goes to show, like, they gotta figure out some things because they gotta make more shots. Like, I know we need guys that can create more off the bounce, but I think personally for me, you just need more guys that consistently make shots because Grizzlies get looks. It's not, for me, the problem is not getting looks. The problem is making, because Brooks got looks. He just got to make them. Like, and then you got guys that need improved shooters. Like, Ja got looks, but he needs to make them. Bane got looks, and he definitely need to make them. And then obviously your bench, that's a question. I mean, Luke could have got more looks. Ty's got to give you more. I mean, again, like, if he's your best backup and you're paying him $15 million, you can't only play him 9 minutes and not give anything. And then Santi, obviously, even though he's shown promise, he's been very up and down in the series because this is the first playoff series, and that's where you hurt because you're basically thin and you're playing guys out of position. So it's just tough. It's very tough. But again, like I said, they played well. Like, they played all right. They didn't play bad. I don't think the Grizzlies played bad. They just didn't make enough plays at the end of the day. Ultimately, that's come down to it. They just didn't make enough plays. I keep saying the same thing, but they just didn't make enough plays. They weren't consistent enough. Because they could have won this game. Like, it wasn't like they were just out of this game. They had the lead. They made big plays, but they couldn't get over that hump. So, it is what it is, man. Can't be too down about it. Like, it's part of it. It's all part of the journey, man. Listen, you're gonna have good moments. Listen, we had good moments last year. Shoot, even this year we had some good years. And you still could have a good moment now. Like, they still got a game to play. The season, I know it sounds like we're talking like the season's over, and I get it, understand 3-1, but there's a game still have to be played. I always say that. We can talk about, oh, they're probably going to lose, like any team. They're going to lose this, they're going to lose that. The game still has to be played. It has to be played. Like, they're not just going to stop and say, oh, we're not going to play no more. Like, these games have to still be played. So it's going to be interesting to see how these games turn out, or this game turns out, because obviously it could be the last game for them. And I'm pretty sure they'll realize that, and they'll come, ready for the moment. But yeah, like, that's just a reality. Like, the game still got to be played, and they got to lock in for 48 minutes to extend their season. So that's just what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of the last thing, I know that because I got to ask you, because I feel like this has been the most polarizing question, like, on the Grizzly stuff, did Dylan Brooks talking to LeBron, do you think that actually had an effect? Like, I actually think that had an effect on the way he played. And I think that not necessarily, like, especially in, like, going back to game 3, kind of in the way that they came out. And not to say that it's completely Dylan Brooks' fault. And I know that a lot of people are going to be on him. And, like, rightfully so, because, called out LeBron and then has had 2 really bad games shooting the basketball, right? Got ejected in the last game. So it's like he definitely deserves, like, he definitely deserves the slander he's getting. Like, I can't lie about that. But I don't know. I legitimately think that, not to say they would have won the series if Dylan didn't talk to LeBron, but I really think that changed a lot of the complexion of the series.
Yeah, I mean, it did. But I always argue about DB. No disrespect. I mean, I sound like a DB hater, and I guess I am to some degree. I'm not a hater. I don't hate him. Obviously, I want my players to do well, but, like, yeah, I mean, Dylan been showing this all year. I'm gonna just go through the numbers. Like, I mean, I'm not always numbers. Oh, you got to go eye test numbers, but we got numbers right now. Eye test we can't talk about because we got to watch the game, But, like, eye test, I mean, our numbers, like, he's shooting 40% on the year, 39.6, 32 from 3, 32.6. This series, I'm looking at a tweet right now. This series right now, he's averaging 11.3 points, shooting 33.3% from the field, 22.2% from 3. 41.6 true shooting percentages and -14 in the plus minus. So, and I mean, to be honest with you, like, yeah, the comments didn't help. Because not only did they didn't help, you then backed away from it after you declined to talk to the media, like all this other stuff, and it ends up biting you. And now, granted, to be honest with you, I'm not deflecting. Like, he doing most of the talk. He usually does most of the talking for the Grizzlies, but Bane also did too. Bane's comment wasn't as bad because people was trying to make a big thing about it. He's talking about Rui and, like, hey, like, he's got to show me to do it again. Like, he probably played the best game of his career, which he did. Rui hasn't played that well since. Like, he didn't have another 30 ball points have gone down each game, but he's been better than what I expected, and he's been playing better than. And that's the thing. Bane was playing bad and up until this game, so like just it sometimes happens. You sometimes talk not too much, but sometimes you talk, and then sometimes it doesn't get backed up. It happens. It's part of the game. But for Brooks, I don't know if it really. I feel like Brooks was going to be Brooks regardless. That's why I brought up the numbers, because he's always been inefficient. No disrespect, but like you knew that. You knew he was streaky, just like the rest of the team. But you knew he was streaky. He shot. He's shown you he is. Last 2 years, he's been. Last year he was 31%. This year he's 33% from three. So you knew what you was gonna get. This is no surprise to me. Like I'm read up the numbers. I was not shocked one bit looking at the numbers at all. I was not shocked. So. Like I don't know if it really influenced too much. I guess you could say Bron, it helped. It could have influenced Bron in a way, but even then, it didn't seem like it didn't work. Like it didn't make Bron like play hero ball like Brooks did. It just made him more locked in, and you'll see more emotion. Like Brooks he got that and one on Brooks at the end of the game, and he was animated because he knows all what's going on this whole series about he's old, blah blah blah. Like he heard that. Like he not just hear it. It's LeBron James. He gonna hear that. So, I don't know if it really helped him. I just felt like Brooks was gonna be Brooks. That's just where I'm at with it. It's just I know what I expect from Dillon Brooks, respectfully, and I know that sounds negative, but like I know what I'm gonna expect. Talking about doodle defense, but offensively he's inefficient, and even if he takes less shots and it's not as shot happy, he's not efficient enough to take the shots that he does take. And you need more from that spot, especially when we go over. You have 2 injuries. Your bench is not there. So now you're depending on your starters. And if one of your starters is not that consistent, then you got to depend on your trio. And if your trio is not consistent, then it gets worse. Your margin of error, like I always say, gets slimmer. So that's just the ultimate tale of the game and really the series. Just, your margin of error was so slim that you weren't able to overcompensate for all the things that happened in these games. A lot of these games, not every game because we obviously won one, but just the games that you lost.
Yeah, I think really when it comes down to Dillon is that like obviously I do think he's still like a really good defender, but I think it's like a night like tonight where what he brings on defense doesn't overshadow like not being a threat offensively. Like there are some nights where it's okay to have him out there, especially if like the other guys have it going. But if it's a night like tonight where Ja isn't shooting the ball well. Even Bane, who ended up having 36, he shot the ball okay. Like he didn't shoot the ball as well as we're used to seeing him shoot the ball either. He had stretches where he did, but not consistently. Jaren didn't shoot the ball well. Really, nobody shot the ball well. And then it's also you have him out there at the end of the game, and they'll pack the paint. And I think that's what you saw a lot from the Lakers is they really just packed the paint, especially on those drives, whether it was Ja, whether it was Desmond Bane, whether it was Jaren trying to fight on the interior and get those offensive boards and trying to get a putback. He was trying to put putbacks up over 2 people. And you can't really do that because it's like they were leaving them wide open. And I think that was the main thing is that we've seen in the past that when Dillon has been wide open, at least he'll make some of them. And then it's tonight, like when you go 1 for 7, like the Grizzlies really just needed him to be 2 for 7. Like if he makes one more of those wide open shots, they win in regulation.
Shoot, 3 for 7. Yeah, 3 for 7, something like that. Something little.
Man, I'm not even asking for 3 for 7. This like that's what I'm saying. It's like it's hard. It's hard to win a playoff game with somebody on offense who is able to be left open. Like you saw it with Tony Allen. As great of a defender Tony Allen was, Tony Allen probably, like you could argue he's the best on-ball defender like you've seen because like Kobe said he's the best defender you ever played against. Kevin Durant said he's the best defender you ever played against. But when it came down to the playoffs and his defense sometimes didn't make up for his lack of offense because they just didn't guard him. And I think you saw basically that same thing with Dillon Brooks tonight. And I think that really did hurt the offense a lot.
Yeah, no, it did. And we're not the only team that's going through this. Like, Cleveland is too, because Cleveland plays 2. And that's what I always say. In today's NBA, it's harder to do in today's NBA. I've always been big. You can't be playing too many. I usually say 2 or 3. You usually can't play 2, no more than 2, really. Really 1. is perfectly like what I would like to see. But you can't play 2 or 3 players that can't either A, can't shoot like at all, like they don't take shots, or B, they are inefficient. And we had that problem because if you go look at the Grizzlies starting lineup, love Ja, but he's not a efficient 3-point shooter. So that's an inefficient 3-point shooter. Bane is a good 3-point shooter, right? Brooks, inefficient. Jaren, even though he's solid, average, he makes more. He's streaky, but I'd say he's an average shooter, which is still good. That's better than what inefficient or not taking him at all. And Tillman doesn't take him. And even if you had Adams healthy, you still have that same predicament. So, and Cleveland's had that same predicament now. They got 2 bigs that can't shoot the ball. And not only that, they're getting nothing from the small forward spot like us in a way where they can't get anything offensively from that spot. So now you're depending on your backcourt to score all the points in some way. And I mean, your front court will give you points, but at the end of the day, in today's league, not to say NBA is a math equation all the way, but like we were talking about earlier, sometimes you got to make a couple more threes. And like it is sometimes a math equation. Like you just got to manufacture some more threes than another team, especially when you're like a defensive team like the Grizzlies. If you manufacture like 2 or 3 more threes a game, you probably win them games because your defense is so elite. So like, and that's sometimes how it ends up. Like, so you play too many inefficient shooters, which is why the Adams and the BC injuries hurt because they give you more possessions. But even then, that's still a safety blanket because those guys don't shoot neither. So then you got to play them in certain lineups that don't present that same issue. So it's just you got to get guys that are more threats offensively. And I'm not saying I'm not saying they got to go and get like a superstar or like, trade if they, what they're going to do this summer. But they do got to understand they got to get more productive offensive players. You got to get more shot makers. Even if it's only 35, 36%. If I go look at percentages now, I'm not going to because we're about to be done. I promise you, there's only maybe 4 guys on our team that are above league average on threes and making them at a decent rate. You need more than that. So they got, and I mean, I trust Zach Kleiman. I'm not worried about Zach Kleiman getting his job done. Not yet. But I trust him. I've seen what he's done the last 4 years, so I trust him. But yeah, they just got to get more shot makers because you're just not going to win games. It's just, you got to score points. It's the name of the game. You can defend all you want, but you got to make some points. You got to get some points, especially in today's league. You just got to get more points. Like in today's offensive league, you got to score they score what we score 111, but even then, you got to get a little bit more. Like that's what it is. So, that's just name of the game. Make a miss league. I keep saying it. Make a miss league, and we missed. We missed a lot.
Definitely. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who listened to this episode. The next episode that drops, it's either going to be a recap of the entire Grizzlies season, or it's going to be the Grizzlies have made one of the best comebacks ever and won in Game 7. But that'll be next week because Game 7 will be on Sunday. But we'll see what happens over this next week, and we will be back with all the Grizzlies coverage you need here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. For Alex, I'm your host, Bryson, and we'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.